Absolutely, and the NPA has come out against the former president to say that he's been disingenuous in saying that because the legal teams have been in talks and that the NPA is ready to go on trial from the 17th of May. Now, you'll recall that this particular date, the 23rd of February, was a holding date pending the outcome of that constitutional challenge brought by French arms company Thales against the NPA, wanting them to drop that racketeering charge. They've lost that constitutional court bid, and of course it is the apex court, and so they have no further recourse in that matter. And so now this has officially paved the way for the trial to get underway, and this is exactly then what we're expecting to be discussed during the court proceedings today, that the trial date will finally be pinned down in a case that has been almost 2 decades in the making, Ayanda.
And part of what people might be watching with great anticipation is the man at the center of this going to appear? It's unlikely.
It's unlikely that he's going to appear, Ayanda, and in fact we understand from those who've been close to the discussions within the NPA that there was a bit of a debate around whether or not he should physically appear, and that he wanted to appear virtually. However, you will know that the former president has been receiving and welcoming several guests at his Nkandla homestead, but we understand then that there was an agreement that there's no particular need for him to physically come. He is going to be able to join virtually, and that the proceedings today will largely then wrap up those pre-trial matters. For an example, the witness list that needed to be consolidated on the part of the NPA, as well as the certification issues related to the trial that needed to be wrapped up the last time this matter was before the court. So significant in the sense that we might finally actually get a trial date set down, and this matter then get put on the court roll, and finally then the beginning of that particular trial related to that controversial late 1990s arms deal, Ayanda.
Yeah, and perhaps, Ziyanda, it's worth us looking into the so-called crystal ball to get a sense of what happens next. So the 17th of May is the date being touted as when the trial will actually begin. Take us through what that actually means.
Well, what it actually means, Ayanda, is that firstly then we'll have witnesses, some of whom I know that there was an argument that some of the witnesses have since died. The last time I checked, the state wanted to have over 200 witnesses taking the stand. So the beginning of this trial would mean then uncovering whether or not then, the veracity of the claims against the former president, in particular when it comes to fraud and corruption and those payments that were paid by his then financial advisor, Shabir Sheikh, whether or not that constitute as an act of corruption, and whether or not he was being used then to use his position as a politician at the time, as the chairperson, in the province at the time, to influence and protect French arms company Thales from prosecution. We'd have to get then from those witnesses where this is coming from. The likes of Patricia de Lille come to mind immediately. She was one of the whistleblowers in that particular arms deal, and she's been speaking out about this since the late 1990s about the alleged corruption that took place in regards to that particular deal. And so if the 17th of May is the agreed date that all legal teams can actually start the trial, we would finally get some closure and clarity on this deal. And we know the former president has said that he would like his day in court, and so that particular day will be granted to him then.
Yeah, and of course, Ziyanda, important to note that today's developments come on the back of recent attacks on the judiciary and the president's newsletter speaking directly at how that could be potentially incredibly problematic.
Absolutely. And so while we are expecting this matter to get underway and for the dates to be finalized, you'll know that yesterday then that the State Capture Commission of Inquiry seeking direct access to the Constitutional Court to urgently hear their matter, to actually make a pronouncement on whether or not former President Jacob Zuma is in contempt of court after failing to appear on the 15th of February as per the summons that were issued to him. Now, we know that he didn't appear earlier on in January as well, but that was pending then the outcome of the Constitutional Court bid that was brought by the State Capture Commission in relation to the former president appearing. We've since seen high-profile politicians going to the former president's homestead in Nkandla to plead with him to actually appear before the commission. Now, what's interesting in those papers that were submitted by the State Capture Commission, one, they're asking that the former president be imprisoned for 2 years. But if you read closely in those papers, there is a bit of a clause there to say, well, if the former president does actually appear before the State Capture Commission, then they could perhaps give him a suspended sentence. And so that is almost, in a way, still another nudge towards the former president actually appearing before the commission to say, appear, and then the likelihood is that you may just get a fine or a suspended sentence. But as it stands, the State Capture Commission of Inquiry would like to see the former president imprisoned for 2 years if the Constitutional Court finds him in contempt of court.
Plenty of moving parts. Ziyanda Ngcobo, thanks very much for helping us place them this morning. Ziyanda Ngcobo, live to us there from just outside the Pietermaritzburg High Court.